Did anyone else notice the use of the word sacrifice by one of our Texas elected officials this week? Maybe, maybe not. It wasn't in reference to Memorial Day and the sacrifices that soldiers make for their country. It was in reference to children who died in the school shooting in Santa Fe, Texas last week. Senator Ted Cruz responded to the tragedy by lifting up the bravery of teachers, students, and law enforcement who rushed into harm's way. But then he referred to the students killed as having sacrificed their lives. Now, I found this statement heartbreaking and troubling, to say the least. There was, of course, a Twitter storm of angry responses pointing out that, in fact, the children were murdered. My response was a little more complicated. The students and teachers who died may not have willingly sacrificed their lives, but actually our society sacrificed them. Their lives were sacrificed for love of guns, by failing to put in place adequate protections, and by choosing and valuing access to weapons over the safety and well-being of our young people. The lives of 8 students and 2 teachers were sacrificed. Again, the school shooting in Santa Fe and the varied responses to it have me thinking about the complexity of sacrifice in a way that I wasn't before this week. Is sacrifice a choice or not? Who willingly sacrifices and who is essentially forced to? What do we sacrifice? And who is most often sacrificed? The answer to that last question seems to be the most marginalized among us. The young, the poor, the people with the least power in our society. For centuries, theologies of sacrifice have been used to denigrate and to break down already marginalized individuals. So sacrifice is fraught when you're in a disadvantaged position already. But George Tiger, the author of our reading this morning, is in a relatively privileged position. He is a Unitarian Universalist minister and a U.S. Army chaplain. In the excerpt that you heard earlier, Tiger tells of his experience returning to the United States and walking through the airport, being greeted with, "Thank you for your service and thank you for your sacrifice." Frankly, he writes, "I've never considered my service a sacrifice. I'm well paid to do this job and I really love what I do, 2 things that many people in this world cannot say. Privilege, yes," he says. "Honor, certainly. But sacrifice, it just doesn't feel that way to me." Now, none of us here sitting in these pews this morning have the experience of dying in battle. And most of us haven't had to face violence in schools or in war zones. So you may be wondering the same thing as Chaplain Tiger. What does sacrifice have to do with me? A common definition of sacrifice, which was actually very similar to what Noe said earlier in the message for the children, is an act of giving up something valued for the sake of something else regarded as more important or worthy. If this is so, then each of us makes sacrifices every day. Not through heroic acts or through giving our lives, but by making choices about what we value and then acting on those choices. When I am presented with a situation that calls me to be truly present with someone or to extend a helping hand, and if I do that, I'll be late or maybe even miss some other commitment, whichever choice I make in that situation, I'm making a sacrifice. As parents, also mentioned earlier, we sacrifice sleep and money and alone time for our beautiful children and our love of them. When we choose to stay late at work, we sacrifice family time. When we take our day off, truly off, and don't let work creep into it, there may be something we simply don't get done, or at least not on the expected timeline. Some of you have made the difficult choice to sacrifice a job or opportunities for advancement for your own health or well-being, for truth and integrity, or for your commitment to justice. Sometimes we're called to love wholeheartedly, knowing that such vulnerability may open us up to pain. And this, too, is a sacrifice. These are the choices we make all the time, every day. Giving up one important thing for something of even greater importance, greater in that moment, at least. Such choices sometimes leave us feeling guilty, and other times we feel like the choice was unequivocally worth it. Does that sound at all familiar? Every time Chaplain Tiger walks through an airport, he is stopped and earnestly thanked for his service and his sacrifice. And he finds himself becoming emotional and misty-eyed, not quite understanding why and seemingly frustrated by it. It took him a while of experiencing this to realize what these groups of children meant and what was going on within him. He realized that what he does matters because his service represents the values that he and these children share: honor, devotion, loyalty, friendship, and yes, even sacrifice. He writes, "Maybe the uniform we wear reminds people that the sacrifices we make every day and will bear the rest of our lives, we make not for ourselves and not for them, but for something greater than any of us may ever truly know or understand." And I love this last line that he says, "Maybe they're saying, thank you for reminding us that despite all the confusion of life, there remain some truths that are truly worth fighting for." I believe there are some truths that are truly worth fighting for, and there are some values truly worth fighting for. And this is what I'm asking us to consider and to reflect on this morning. What are those truths and values that you hold most dear, and what you are willing to sacrifice for them? When I ponder this question, the lyrics of a song from the musical Hamilton come to mind. Aaron Burr, sir, anybody know that song? Burr's advice to the feisty revolutionary Alexander Hamilton about getting ahead was to talk less, smile more, and don't let them know what you're against or what you're for. Now, Hamilton's response was, "If you stand for nothing, Burr, what do you fall for? Who are you?" Indeed, who are you? What do you stand for? And what do you fall for? Many Unitarian Universalists I've heard answer this question with, "I stand for love." This is what we've explored as a church when we talk about putting love first. And this is what has propelled so many, past and present, to devote themselves to movements for justice, sometimes making great sacrifices in the process. People have put their bodies, safety, and comfort on the line for these values because they believe that they are worth fighting for. I think of those rallying and being arrested around the country in recent weeks as part of the Poor People's Campaign led by William Barber. And I think of people a little farther in the past, like Viola Liuzzo. She was a Unitarian Universalist civil rights activist from Detroit, Michigan. She was a 39-year-old housewife and mother of 5 kids. And when Martin Luther King called for people to convene in Selma, Alabama after the Bloody Sunday massacre on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, she went. She dropped everything. She left her family behind in Detroit to go to the center of the movement, where she helped with coordination and various logistical tasks. And one day, while driving back from the Montgomery airport where she was shuttling her fellow activists, she was murdered by members of the Ku Klux Klan. She made a choice not unlike those that many of us make between commitment to family and to our daily life and commitment to larger causes, like causes of justice. But her choice ended up having devastating consequences. She did not go to Selma expecting to sacrifice her life, but that was the unfortunate outcome. How many of us would be willing to sacrifice our lives for a cause? To be honest, I'm not sure I would. Martyrdom, while sometimes praised, is not always a good thing. Sacrificing of oneself instead of sacrificing oneself is another matter. It's about letting go of some things that we cling to for a greater good, and that I can get on board with. What might you give up for love of family, for peace and justice, for integrity, for loyalty to people or a cause? For example, I have at times risked vulnerability and discomfort, understanding that these sacrifices will contribute to causes of love and justice. It's a choice we make, guided always by what we value, what we feel is most important. The prophets of the Hebrew Bible say again and again, because the people need reminding again and again, that the way to please God is not through ritual sacrifices. They say to the people of Israel, do not think that the highest value is sacrificing thousands of rams or your firstborn child or your own life. What is asked of you is to live a life guided by the values of love, kindness, mercy, and humility. Do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God, is how Micah put it. How you live is what will bring you into greater harmony with the divine. As we embody love, seek truth, and serve others, these values that we lift up in our affirmation every week, these guiding values sometimes require sacrifices, but they are more often spiritual sacrifices than they are material. Do not worry, you will not find us expecting burnt offerings or animal sacrifices around here, but your faith and values may require sacrifices of another kind. The Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, who has been for a year the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, of which our congregation is a part, has been reminding and challenging Unitarian Universalists around the country that this is no time for a casual faith. She says this is no time for a casual commitment to our faith and values, and it's no time to think that we're in all of this alone. Her message is not unlike that of Alexander Hamilton. This is not a time to be neutral. Who are you? What is most important to you? How does this call you to live? What might be required of you? What choices and sacrifices will you make, both big and small? Viola Liuzzo did not have a casual faith. Her faith and her commitment to justice called her to deeper involvement in the civil rights movement. Chaplain Tiger doesn't have a casual faith. His faith calls him to minister to those serving in the U.S. Army, often in situations of great danger, where they are making choices and sacrifices guided by their values. Whether you are making choices about family or career or community engagement or how you spend your time, do not bring to it a casual faith. Reflect with heart and mind on what values guide you and be willing to make sacrifices for them when necessary. Today on Memorial Day, we remember and give thanks for those who have given their lives, those who have believed so passionately in their values that they have sacrificed their lives in wars and struggles for justice. And we mourn those who have showed up but whose lives were sacrificed against their will due to injustice or systems of evil. Memorial Day, a time when we honor lives lost in wars over the years, is a time of both memory and hope. Remembering the sacrifices made and hoping that someday there will be no more loss of life in the battlefields and in the streets. This is no time for a simple or a casual faith. Our faith must hold both memory and hope today and all days. Much will be required of us, so may we rise to the challenge. Amen.